Lads, let's have a quick chat about something that I don't know you're allowed to talk about on telly anymore, but let's all find out together, which is about bringing up boys and bringing up the right type of boys and about the men of the future, right? Now, sure, super rich school in Sydney, the director of pastoral care says that we encourage a eulogy-type thinking about how will people remember you, that sort of thing. We try to challenge the boys' understanding of what it is to be a strong man as defined by character. He's got more on this. One of our aims is to educate the man at 40 years of age. We want to prepare boys for a life to instil virtues such as integrity, resilience and perseverance, which is great to hear, among other things. We don't want our students to be merely defined by what they have achieved as 18-year-olds, which I love to see. So let's start with you first here, Gary. It's interesting to hear this about suggesting that you say to a teenager, and look, we all remember when we were, good luck telling us 40 was going to be something we'd experience, let alone how to plan for it. But good to hear words like resilience in there rather than just, suck the thumb and blame everyone else.
Mate, I think taking responsibility is a really critical thing. And look, the PC Brigade hate the terminology, but boys have got to man up and actually take responsibility for their conduct. My late mother always taught me that you shouldn't stick your head in the oven just because your mates do. In other words, be a leader, don't be a follower, and to actually have people who inspire you to be a better person around you. I always found that I did better at work by talking to the person who was older, had greyer hair, who knew more about stuff, had been there, done that, got the scar material, and was actually quite happy for me to make calculated mistakes. But you never make mistakes that you haven't calculated what the effect of that would be. In other words, you never gamble what you can't lose. So you've only got to gamble what you're prepared to lose. So you've got to take risks, but you've got to own your mistakes, and you've got to be humble enough to seek advice from those who've been there, done that. And that's one of the problems in the workforce today, mate, is that there's so many people. I turned 60 a couple of months ago, but there's people who half my age who are making decisions about who to hire, and once you hit 50, they think you're stuffed. And I think that's part of the problem. The baby boomers, by the way, Paul, one last thing. The baby boomers will be out of the workforce in a decade, and I worry about where Australia is going to be unless we get our kids to actually want to learn from those who've been there, done that.
Yeah, I mean, your experience would have been the same sort of in journalism and certainly mine, in the media thing, which is that I love hearing war stories, right? I learn way more from people who did it before and did it different and did it better or did it differently. You learn way more. And I always sort of say that to employees when if they ask around places like this about how to learn, how to move ahead. But also it's just things, Ed, about resilience, about, we for decades have had a conversation about empowering young women. Of course, cool. Father of daughters, I want that to be the case. I tell my little girls any day, I'll back you with whatever you want to be, right? If you want to be one day a pirate or one day somebody going to space, good luck. Let's make it happen. But I think it's important to have a chat about blokes every now and then, and there's nothing wrong with this conversation. So again, the next group of lads coming through, do you think that resilience is the important message or compassion?
I think both. I've been very lucky. My old man, Louis, who's watching. G'day, Dad. G'day, Dad. I've got 3 boys and 2 girls. So Michael, Tommy and William, who I think are watching, g'day. And perhaps Olivia's watching, Grace will be in bed. But, the relationship is about those kind of things. Like we've spent a lot of time together and you spend time going for hikes, you spend time kicking a footy, you spend time wrestling when they're little until they get bigger and stronger than you. But resilience is one of the things you learn through a lot of things, through sport, through having a part-time job, which I think is really important for both boys and girls. But also compassion. My kids' school, my boys' school, I know one of the things that really impresses me is the way they treat some of the young fellas who are part of their class who have disabilities. There's been some great young fellas with Down syndrome who have gone all the way through mainstream schooling, and the way those other boys treat them is a measure of them as young men, and that's instilled in them. And so the virtue of compassion is as manly as other masculine attributes which are more traditional, and I think we need to teach boys both. And one thing I learnt, and one piece of advice for people raising boys, if you want to get a boy to talk, don't just sit there and try and talk to them. My girls will talk to me. They'll just sit and chat, have a cup of coffee while they're having a hot chocolate, but kick a footy, take them for a hike, do something, and then the boys will open up, which is a great way to get to know them.
Cory, I've got this image that the young people in your family, they grew up by sort of arm wrestling their dad as the first thing every morning. Then they had to go and do some taekwondo. Then they had to go for a little bit of a hunt. Then they had to go and wakeboard. You know, to live like a man was important. How do you manage this relationship about making sure that your blokes are good ones?
Well, I'm very proud of my two young men now, and they are both adults, and they're much better men than I ever was at their age, and I suspect that'll continue. But, you know, we understood that boys were different, and one of the great things that happened to us was a friend of ours gave us a book about raising boys, and it talks emphatically about the emotional challenges or differences between boys and girls and how they should be brought up, and it really is about tapping into that. And I found that enormously helpful. But when this story came out today, my first thought was, bravo. Finally, we're getting schools acknowledging that boys' learning experiences, boys' understandings, they are different to girls, and it needs a different approach. And as Zed said, you know, you take your boys out and you kick the footy, they hate you teaching them how to kick left foot until they actually get in the team because they can kick with their left leg and their right leg. They hate being taught how to ride a bicycle because it hurts when you crash, but ultimately they love that, and that's what part of being a boy is about. It's about smashing things, about hurting yourself occasionally in a protected environment, and it's an imperfect science. We're all imperfect people, but by gosh, I reckon the art of manliness is necessary to resurrect.
But also, it's funny that you say that, because obviously, you know, I've got a 5-year-old, 2-year-old, you mention them all the time, right? But with Asher, I'm desperately trying, and even though she's a little girl, right, I'm trying to sort of do some of those boy things, right? When you say about, you know, ride the bike, yes, it hurts, yes, you fall off, don't sook, get back on, go again, right? And look, you know, Mum doesn't agree sometimes with my 80s-esque methods, but I just think that's sort of a nice thing to, that I like that we're a freer group of people now that don't say, hey, boys, you can't be interested in fashion, right? And girls, you can't be interested in superheroes and rough play. It's all kind of that one thing now. And I like being able to kind of hopefully hand that on until eventually, of course, they will get revenge. They don't need to do anything apart from join the Greens and disappoint their father for the rest of their lives, which no doubt will be the case.